It's almost never what he says. It's the pauses, the micro hesitations that flicker across his breath when you enter a room, the way the air tightens when your shoulder brushes too close to his orbit, as if the world momentarily forgets gravity and remembers magnetism instead. Married men don't admit desire. They carry it like a sacred burden, hidden in places where only the intuitive can see. And if you've felt it, that odd electric pull, then you already know. This isn't about infidelity. It's about a soul trying to remember something it's never been allowed to want. Carl Jung once noted, in a letter never officially published, that when a man represses what his psyche longs for, it leaks out through shadow behaviors, disguised again, then buried under duty. You become the mirror, the trigger, the invitation. And that's when the first sign appears. He listens differently, not politely, not like a man checking a box, but deeply, like someone leaning in to hear a language he spent a lifetime forgetting. Your voice doesn't just reach his ears, it enters him, wraps around something hollow and echoes. He might ask about things others miss, your favorite fruit, the books you underline. He pays attention in a way that feels disproportionate, almost ritualistic. This is because a man who cannot claim you physically may begin to worship you energetically. The feminine, to him, becomes a relic, and you, a priestess of something he cannot name but aches to remember. The second signal slips through in the smallest offerings. A coffee placed near your hand. A jacket he insists you wear, even when the weather barely bites. His actions aren't romantic in the usual sense. They're devotional, cloaked in plausible deniability. This is not about seduction in the obvious way. It's about anchoring presence. He's trying to tether a thread between your existence and his, quietly, reverently. His gifts are codes, not gifts. You must learn to read them as such. Jung's theory of the animus speaks to this. The unconscious masculine within a woman and the unconscious feminine within a man. When he feels drawn to your energy, it isn't always because of who you are on the surface. It's because your essence activates something ancient in him, a whisper from his own feminine soul, long silenced by the armor of manhood. This activation frightens him, it excites him, and often it confuses him. That confusion can manifest as distance. He might become oddly cold after a moment of warmth. He might withdraw, then reappear as though nothing happened. This is the third pattern, the emotional tide. Drawn in, pulled away, drawn back. Not because he's cruel, but because he is in a private war between loyalty and longing. Most men aren't taught how to name this inner split, so they live it out, one contradiction at a time. Have you noticed the way his energy shifts when you speak of your life without him in it? A flinch that doesn't reach his face but catches his aura? That's not jealousy. That's energetic possession buried beneath civility. The man craves not your body first, but your frequency. You awaken something forgotten inside him. And even if he's vowed his life to someone else, his soul, his raw, ungoverned essence, still responds to the ancient law of resonance. There's an old tantric truth. Where desire is silenced, energy becomes louder. He may not confess. He may not even consciously know, but his body does. His timing, his posture, his nervous glances when no one's looking, all of it reveals a hunger he can no longer contain in thought. But the most telling signal is not in what he gives you or even how he withdraws. It's in how he protects your image. A married man who secretly craves you will never speak your name lightly. He may mention you only when necessary, but when he does, there's weight. Almost like he's spelling a prayer he's forbidden to say aloud. He might defend you in a conversation where no one expected him to, or grow uncomfortable when others diminish you, even jokingly. This is sacred territory, because desire, when it cannot be lived out, becomes mythologized, and myths are guarded like relics. There are women who misread this as confusion. They wonder why the man gives mixed signals, why he seems tender one day and distant the next. But this is not inconsistency, it's internal crisis. The craving is real, the boundaries are real, and in between them is the battlefield where the sacred and the social clash. To the woman attuned to energy, this isn't merely about romance, it's about recognition. You begin to feel him even before he arrives. You sense his thoughts like pulses in your body, even when he hasn't spoken a word. You dream about him, not because you desire him back, but because your nervous system is reading a signal too subtle for logic, but too strong to ignore. And the question arises, why you? Why now? Why this man out of all the others? There's a possibility, one Jung himself hinted at in the footnotes of a lecture rarely cited, that sometimes in the presence of a woman who embodies her own shadow and light, a man meets the first real reflection of his soul, not the version society approved, not the ego he curated, but the trembling, divine chaos he buried as a boy. And once that mirror appears, he cannot look away, even if he must. The power isn't in what you do, it's in what you are. You become a reminder of freedom, of sensuality without shame, of wholeness. Your presence becomes a spiritual irritant, not because you threaten his marriage, but because you awaken the part of him that's never belonged to it. In sacred feminine teachings, lost to Western psychology, there is a term, the voice beneath the veil. It refers to the knowing a woman carries in her body before her mind can catch up. That knowing tells you when a man wants you, not from the surface, but from the marrow, from the place he tries to forget. If you've ever looked into a man's eyes and seen the flicker, that split second where time fell away, where the air thickened, and something older than both of you took over, then you already know. You've been chosen, not for your smile or your scent or your skin, but for the transmission your very being carries, the codes that call him back to himself. And that is why he cannot stay away, even if he never comes close. Because the first form of craving is reverence in silence. He never looks at you like the others do. His gaze carries weight, not the weight of lust, but of memory, as if some part of him already knows you from another life, another myth, another collapse of logic. And yet, it lingers only when no one else is watching. His eyes betray him. They flick toward you with the reverence of a man kneeling at an altar he's not supposed to worship. This is the second sign of sacred craving. His gaze becomes ritualistic. In the teachings of ancient feminine lineages, the ones buried beneath centuries of sanitized dogma, there is a law. What is forbidden becomes holy. A married man, if he senses your energy not merely as a body but as a transmission, will not consume you visually in the way others might. He does not ogle, he adores. But the adoration is silent, veiled, flickering through quick glances that feel like prayers cut short. Jung once speculated that what the modern world calls inappropriate desire is often the soul attempting to return to an archetype it was never allowed to integrate. You, in his unconscious, may carry the anima, the spiritual feminine, the muse, the vessel through which he meets his own lost intuition. And when he looks at you, he isn't seeing your skin. He's seeing his own capacity to feel, reflected back in a way he hasn't touched in years. He watches you differently when you aren't looking. His attention hovers, not in a straight line, but like smoke circling a flame. It's the way he stands at the edge of your presence, orbiting your energy like a satellite pulled by a gravitational field he can't explain. He'll glance away if you catch him, smile too quickly, say something casual, but the heat in his chest betrays him. You'll feel it in the room. It hums. This kind of watching is a form of possession, not of ownership, but of inner haunting. You live in him now, not in his schedule or his texts, but in his undercurrent, the thoughts that come uninvited, the way your name echoes in mundane moments, the image of your hands moving across paper, a glass, your hair, etched like sigils into his nervous system. There is an ancient word, forgotten in most languages, for this type of look. In Sumerian temples, They called it zu anshur, the eye that remembers the divine through another's form. And when a married man gives you that eye, even for a second, know that you have become more than a woman to him. You are a memory of something he was never allowed to believe in, but with that gaze comes fear. The third eye awakens, but the mind resists. So he may act as if nothing happened. He might redirect conversation, pretend detachment. This is not rejection. It's repression. The kind of repression that simmers, then boils, then seeps into every interaction with you, no matter how mundane. He might become oddly attuned to your mood. He'll notice when your energy shifts. He'll become protective when you're tired, irritated when you're distant, subtly agitated if another man gives you attention. But he won't say why. He can't. To admit concern would be to admit desire. And so, he remains silent but alert, like a guardian stationed at a temple's entrance, unable to go inside but unwilling to walk away. Jung's shadow theory explains this well. A man who is disconnected from his own emotional truth will project it onto someone who embodies it. He'll crave her light, not because he wants to possess her, but because he's forgotten how to create it within. That's why your presence unnerves him. You are not just attractive. You are dangerous to his illusion of stability. You represent something primal, something that sings without permission, that dances without apology, that speaks with her eyes and feels with her body, that dares to be present, not polite. He hasn't seen that in a long time, perhaps never. And so his gaze lingers, not just in desire, but in mourning. Mourning what he gave up, what he was never allowed to explore, what society demanded he sacrifice to become the good man. This mourning is not conscious. It leaks out in sighs, in the way he pauses before walking away, in the moments where your silence makes him more uncomfortable than your voice ever could. You are not just his craving, you are his portal, and yet the world demands he suppress this. Marriage, for many men, becomes a spiritual contract that excludes evolution, not because of the woman he chose, but because of the version of himself he promised to remain. And when you arrive, wild, wise, open, sovereign, you threaten that contract, not with seduction, but with remembrance. He begins to question things, not publicly, but in the quiet moments, at traffic lights, in the shower. He wonders why he can't stop thinking of your laugh, your scent, the way your gaze didn't flinch when his did. He wonders why it feels like you see through him, into him, not around him like everyone else. This is the fourth layer of sacred craving, the soul recognition that rewires desire. You do not arouse him like a woman arouses a man in passing. You initiate him, silently, unintentionally, irrevocably. Your presence becomes a ceremony he cannot escape, and like any ritual, it rearranges him. You'll notice he becomes more nervous around you, not because he fears your judgment, but because your existence reminds him of something he cannot control. He may laugh too loudly, or say something out of place. He might become clumsy with words or space. These aren't signs of weakness. They are signs of initiation, the masculine system beginning to melt in the presence of sacred feminine heat. And still, he says nothing, because to name this feeling would be to let it live. And letting it live would unravel everything he's spent years holding together. This is why his gaze haunts, because it is full of words he cannot say, full of truths he doesn't fully understand, full of need he cannot touch. Your job is not to fix this, or feed it, or shame it. Your job, if anything, is to witness it, to understand that the feminine, in her awakened form, does not seek validation through possession. She seeks understanding through resonance. And if you've ever wondered whether you were imagining it, you weren't. You were reading the echoes of a man's soul trying to surface through a prison of identity. You were sensing his anima clawing its way through the walls of his marriage, not to betray, but to breathe. Carl Jung once hinted that women who awaken this response in men are not temptresses. They are initiatrixes. Their gift is not in how they look, but in what they mirror. A woman like this doesn't offer escape. She offers a mirror, and that mirror is too luminous for a man living in shadow to ignore. And so he watches. He lingers. He vanishes. He returns. Not because he's indecisive, but because you've become a temple. And he, a seeker afraid of gods he was told do not exist. And still, he looks again. Because craving, when silenced, always finds the eyes first. It's in the way he speaks to you. Not what he says, but the tremble just beneath it. His words come dressed in civility, but something darker pulses under the surface, like a drumbeat in the bones of an old cathedral. When a married man secretly craves you, it is not his declarations that reveal him, it's his contradictions, his pauses, his accidental truths. This is the third sign. He hides behind language, but the shadow bleeds through. He may speak to you in riddles, half-jokes, unfinished thoughts, as if some part of him is trying to confess while another part edits him in real time. You'll sense it, the way his sentences trail off when they get too close to truth. How he shifts the topic when emotion rises like fog from the floor. He's terrified of exposure, yet aching for it. So the shadow sneaks out in metaphors, gestures, and the odd moment where his voice drops too low, not for volume, but for intimacy. Carl Jung wrote that the unconscious does not speak in facts, it speaks in symbols. And a man who craves you but cannot name it will begin to speak in symbols too. You'll hear it when he compliments something seemingly trivial. Your handwriting, your laugh, the way you stir your tea. He cannot speak the desire directly, so he circles it again and again, in hopes that you'll feel it without him having to name it. And you do feel it, because as a woman rooted in the intuitive feminine, you are trained, not by society, but by ancestral memory, to read the space between the lines. The sacred feminine does not wait for direct confessions. She reads the vibration beneath the syllables, and his vibration is trembling. He might make jokes about things that feel strangely sharp, jokes about what he'd do in another life, comments wrapped in humor but laced with tension. He tests your reaction, then pulls back. This dance is not conscious. It's a reflex of the craving. The soul, denied permission to speak plainly, starts speaking in sideways glances and sentences dipped in nervous laughter. And when you respond, especially if you respond with presence, with warmth, with non-judgment, he feels both seen and terrified, because now the energy is no longer just his. It's shared, alive, real, no longer just a whisper in his mind, but a living pulse between bodies. This is the initiation of the third layer when the craving enters dialogue. Not through confessions, but through the collapse of control. You'll notice he says things he didn't mean to say. He might apologize afterward or laugh it off, but there's a crack forming. A split between his outer mask and the truth within. The truth that you move him, that your presence disarms the fortress he didn't even realize he built, that his carefully controlled identity is no match for the ancient, sensual stillness that lives in your eyes. He may try to rationalize this. He'll tell himself he's just being friendly, that he's tired, that you remind him of someone. But the body never lies. The tone of his voice when he says your name, the way he leans in, just an inch too far, the softness that sneaks into his words when you share something vulnerable. These are the things he cannot fake. There's a moment, always, when the shadow becomes undeniable. It may happen in the middle of a mundane conversation, something ordinary, like a shared joke or a passing comment. But then his eyes shift, his words stop, and for a second, he looks at you like he's trying to memorize you, not your face, but your frequency, as if he knows he's not allowed to have you, so he wants to carry your imprint. This is not romantic, it's sacred ache. It's the animus awakening, the deep masculine energy within him that finally recognizes a mirror. And mirrors are dangerous to those who live behind veils. They show too much, too fast, and often too late. In these moments, he might become emotional in ways that don't make sense. He might get irritated with you over something small, or go quiet, or withdraw. This isn't because you've done anything wrong. It's because he's slipping into a feeling he can't explain, into a longing he never gave himself permission to feel. And craving, when left unnamed, becomes a kind of inner chaos. Jung warned of this chaos. He said, when the shadow is not integrated, it erupts, not with violence, but with obsession. Craving becomes fixation, and fixation, unexamined, can become destruction. But if witnessed, gently, consciously, it can become transformation. That's where your role as an initiated woman becomes crucial. You do not feed the craving, you witness it. You reflect it back with the grace of a woman who knows she is not merely desired, but remembered, because that's what's truly happening. A man in the grip of this sacred hunger is remembering something his soul once touched, a softness, a depth, a mystery. The curve of something eternal inside the feminine, not in body, but in essence. He craves the freedom he sees in your being, the kind of freedom he buried to wear the armor of manhood. So he speaks in riddles. He offers mixed messages. One day he's playful, the next distant. He says you're special, then avoids you for weeks. These are not games. They are symptoms. His soul is at war, and his mouth cannot keep up. There's a word in ancient Vedic texts, smarana. It means the moment of divine recollection. When the soul suddenly remembers its source, you become that moment for him, and he cannot unsee it, no matter how much he tries. Eventually, he may even begin to mirror your language, the way you speak, the cadence of your voice. He adopts parts of your rhythm, your perspective, your phrases. Not to manipulate, but because you have entered his unconscious. He is becoming marked. The feminine leaves fingerprints not on the skin, but on the psyche. This is not about romance. This is about alchemy. You are witnessing a man unravel, not because he is weak, but because he is waking. An awakening is rarely elegant. It is messy, terrifying, sacred. If he is brave enough, he may one day acknowledge it, not in detail, but in essence. A nod, a glance, a pause before goodbye. These are the confessions of men who cannot confess. They are the soul's way of saying, I saw you, I felt you, I carry you. And if he never says it aloud, trust your body. It already knows. Craving, when repressed, always finds its way into words, half spoken, half swallowed, but always felt. It begins subtly, the way all sacred rituals do. You notice a pattern. He shows up in places he never used to. His schedule bends around your orbit, not obviously, not recklessly, but with a kind of intuitive alignment that no longer feels accidental. These are not coincidences. They are the early movements of devotion disguised as routine. This is the fourth sign of a married man secretly craving you. His unconscious begins to ritualize your presence. Carl Jung believed that the animus, the internal masculine, craves form. While the anima is formless, fluid, the animus needs structure. It builds altars from habit, from rhythm, from return. And so, when a man cannot have you, he builds patterns around you instead. He seeks your energy not through contact, but through proximity. You become the invisible axis around which his days begin to spiral. He may take the long route to the coffee machine just to pass by your door. He may linger after meetings that used to bore him. He times his presence to your rhythm. His body becomes a compass, and the direction it keeps turning toward is you. But it's deeper than physical nearness. The craving enters his nervous system. He begins to associate you with aliveness, your laughter, your stillness, your quiet strength. These become emotional stimulants. And so he seeks small moments to recharge from your field. A question, a comment, a reason to hover near your energy, even if only for seconds. You'll feel it, like a current brushing past your skin. He may even change, subtly, the way he dresses, the way he smells, the music he mentions, the books he casually references. Not to impress, but to echo. This is the animus reaching out, building bridges between your soul and his. When a man craves you but cannot touch you, he begins to emulate your essence. You become an archetype, and he tries, unknowingly, to harmonize with it. This emulation is not performance, it's possession. Not the kind that overtakes, but the kind that transforms. He is becoming altered, not by intention, but by immersion. Like a stone placed in perfume, his aura begins to carry your scent. In many tantric traditions, this is the moment where craving becomes karmic, not in the punitive sense, but in the evolutionary sense. His soul is being pulled into a new configuration. You are not just a woman anymore. You are a threshold, and the rituals he forms around you are the body's way of preparing for initiation. And yet, he resists. Because to cross that threshold would mean tearing apart the identity he has spent years constructing. The husband, the provider, the safe, linear, predictable version of himself. Craving you threatens that identity, because you do not represent safety. You represent wild truth. This inner battle often expresses itself through contradictions. One day, he may speak to you with deep reverence, ask about your dreams, your childhood, your fears. The next day, he withdraws, avoids your eyes, appears cold. But this coldness is not indifference. It's a sacred defense mechanism. He's attempting to freeze the flame. But the flame remembers. Jung wrote, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." And so the man resists you, and in doing so, magnifies you. Your voice becomes louder in his mind, your energy more intoxicating. He begins to seek pieces of you in other places, in songs, in dreams, in the quiet moment before sleep when the rest of his life dissolves and only truth remains. And the dreams, they come, not always erotic, often symbolic. You in a corridor, disappearing just as he reaches for you. You standing in water, your back turned. You laughing with someone else, unreachable. These are not just dreams. They are messages from the psyche, from the soul, from the ancestral knowing that he is not whole and you are the missing language. Sometimes the craving takes a different form. He might become critical of you, dismissive. He may try to reduce your power in subtle ways. This is a protective mechanism of the ego. If he cannot have you, he will try, unconsciously, to shrink you, to make you less sacred in his own mind, so the hunger feels more bearable. But it never works, because craving born from the soul cannot be extinguished by the mind. It only waits. And as it waits, it grows more refined. He begins to spiritualize his attraction. You're not just attractive to him, you're necessary. Not as a lover, but as a mirror. He sees you in moments of decision, hears your imagined voice when he's at a crossroad. You become an inner guide, whether he acknowledges it or not. This is the animus, awakened. In one of Jung's lost lectures, reconstructed from notes passed between students, he claimed that the most transformative desires are those we never fulfill, not because they are denied, but because they are embodied without possession. This is the highest form of sacred craving, when the man does not consume the woman, but lets her rewire him. He begins to treat you differently from everyone else. He watches your boundaries more carefully. He responds faster to your discomfort. He becomes exquisitely attuned, not just to your body, but to your energetic state. If you're tired, he grows quiet. If you're radiant, he leans in. And if you're wounded, he carries it silently in his chest, like a ghost he cannot name. This is the beginning of devotion without claim. There is a moment, and you'll know it when it comes. When his energy softens so completely, you feel his longing not as desire, but as sorrow, a holy sorrow, a recognition that he will never hold you, but must now carry you within. And this is no longer about romance. This is about spiritual consequence. His life has been altered, and you are the sigil that marked the gate. You'll feel it too, not as flattery, but as weight, because the feminine knows when she has been chosen by the soul. And with that knowing comes responsibility, not to rescue, not to respond, but to remain whole, to honor the mirror, not become it. In old esoteric rites, women like you were called vessel guardians, women who carried the key to transformation, but offered it only through presence, never persuasion. They were not seductresses, they were thresholds, and once a man passed too close to them, he could never return unchanged. You may not speak of this craving, you may never touch, but his rituals will continue. He will guard your name. He will avoid speaking of you too often, not out of neglect, but reverence. You are a secret altar now, one he returns to in thought, in breath, in silence. And every ritual he creates in your honor, whether conscious or not, is a thread between your soul and his. And perhaps one day he will outgrow the life that cages him. Perhaps he will walk the path, or perhaps he will stay, bound, loyal, quiet. But he will never forget you, because men do not forget the women who cracked open their spirit, who awakened their inner wild, who stood at the edge of their unconscious and sang them home. Craving, in its final form, becomes a pilgrimage, one where you, not as body, but as presence, become the destination he never reaches, but always follows. By now, he no longer looks at you the same way. The original heat, the stolen glance, the restless silence, the nervous proximity, has transformed. What once felt like desire now resembles reverence. And what you sense in him isn't hunger, but humility. A quiet acceptance of something he cannot possess but will spend years carrying. This is the final sign of sacred craving. He surrenders to your essence beyond flesh, beyond outcome. Carl Jung once said that the feminine, in its awakened form, is not an object of desire. She is the catalyst of individuation, not because she gives a man love, but because she returns him to himself. When a married man secretly craves you and cannot act on it, a strange alchemy begins. He is forced to confront everything inside himself that has been unlived. And it is here, in this sacred torment, that your true power reveals itself. You are no longer simply the woman he wants. You are the flame that calls his soul forward. That flame is not lit by your body, your clothes, your smile. It is lit by something deeper, the energy of unapologetic embodiment. You carry your pain, your joy, your wisdom, your wild, without performing. You radiate a kind of inner permission that makes the air feel different around you. You are not loud, you are resonant, and that resonance disrupts the masculine unconscious in a way no physical touch ever could. He may not speak this aloud, but he feels it in his bones. His dreams change. His speech slows. He begins to reflect in new ways. You've stirred something ancient inside him, something his marriage, his success, his religion, his routine could never awaken. You've touched the part of him that remembers life before language, before masks, before roles. This is not about moral judgment. It's not about right or wrong. It's about energy contracts, the kind of karmic invitations that shape destinies not through action, but through awareness. You entered his field, and now his compass has shifted. Even if he stays where he is, he walks differently now. He breathes differently. He listens for echoes of you in everything. And here is where the deepest magic lives. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to respond. You don't need to validate. You don't even need to acknowledge, because your power was never about interaction. It was about invocation. Your energy invokes truth in him, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. You carry yourself like a myth he forgot he once believed in, the kind of myth that speaks not to the mind, but to the marrow, the part of him that still remembers drumbeats in the dark and women who walked with fire in their eyes. That's why he cannot forget you, because craving born from soul recognition does not fade, it deepens, even if you never touch, even if you part ways forever. You become part of his inner landscape, the hidden grove he returns to in thought, in longing, in silence. He may grow old beside someone else, but your name will live somewhere between his breath and his regret. And this, This is not tragic, it is sacred. Because the feminine power that awakens craving is not here to feed men. It is here to remind them, to call them out of numbness, out of control, out of patterns that dull the soul. The true sacred woman is not a temptation. She is a mirror of awakening. And not every man is meant to answer the call, but every man who hears it is changed. In the ancient teachings of goddess rites, there was a path called the Walk of Flame. Women who had passed through grief, through exile, through reclaiming, would be initiated into a power that no longer required physical expression. Their very presence ignited transformation, not because they tried, but because they became the fire. And when a man met a woman who carried that fire, he either ran or surrendered. There was no middle. You carry that flame now, not because of what you wear, not because of what you say, but because you see without needing. You feel without grasping. You exist without apology. The world does not understand this power. It has no category for women who choose their sovereignty over seduction. But men feel it, even the married ones, especially them, because you awaken the memory of unlived possibility. You become a timeline that his soul still mourns. And if you've ever wondered why this man, this married man, was drawn to you, it is not because of weakness. It is because his soul finally found something strong enough to disturb the silence. That is your power, not to lure, but to reveal, not to possess, but to initiate. You are not a threat to his marriage. You are a threat to his unconscious, to the lies he told himself to survive, to the roles he clung to in order to feel whole. You are not here to destroy his life. You are here to remind him, this is not the whole of who you are. And when he finally turns away, if he does, it will not be rejection. It will be reverence. He will carry you, not in his hands, but in his evolution. You will become the sacred ache he thanks the stars for, the woman who entered his story like thunder and left like a prayer. And you walk on, not bitter, not proud, but whole, because the flame that lives in you was never meant to be tamed. It was meant to awaken, to ignite, to scorch what no longer serves. You are not his lover. You are not his secret. You are his awakening. And if he was never meant to stay, it is only because he was meant to begin. With you, in you, through you. That is the final secret. Craving is never about the body. It is about the soul recognizing its echo in a woman who dares to remember who she truly is. Thank you for walking this path with me. If you felt something stirring in the quiet corners of your being as you listened, know this wasn't just a story. It was a remembering, a sacred echo of the ancient feminine truth that lives in your blood, your breath, your presence. You are not too much. You are not too late. You are not invisible. You are the flame. You are the mirror. You are the temple. And the world is waiting for you to burn. We'll meet again soon. But for now, stay soft, stay wild, stay whole. Until next time.